right, good morning. Welcome in. Fuel up with Fleetway Market, over 20 locations in the state of Mississippi. Fuel up with Fleetway Market, 3 locations close to us, Gluckstadt, Madison, and Dogwood. Gluckstadt has the Market Cafe for lunch. Fantastic food. Fuel up with Fleetway Market in the state of Mississippi. Out of bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. LSU has a new head coach. They poached Brian Kelly from Notre Dame. Some of the, I don't even know if they're national media anymore. I'll have to debate that later on with Jordy Culotta over some beers. They think they're national media, but some, Pat Forty, Dan Wolken, some of the dudes out west are not happy about it. They were okay when Lincoln Riley made the move to Southern Cal, but somebody leaves to go to the big bad SEC, and I don't know. They're not as happy. We welcome in Jordy Culotta. He's got his own show, LSU Insider, on the Bell's Two-Hearted Ale guest line. Jordy, you and I have been texting back and forth for the last few weeks. We've had you on a couple of times. We've talked about Scott Woodward, and he likes to go get the big fish. What was your initial reaction when you saw it was a done deal with Brian Kelly?
I thought it was a phenomenal hire. It's good to be back, Bo. Thank you for bringing me back on. And my initial thought was that Scott Woodward just went Scott Woodward. He took his time. He found his guy. You'll never really know all the details of how he got to Brian Kelly. But I think if you would have told LSU fans 6 weeks ago when this process started that you would end up at the finish line with a guy like Kelly and his resume and, his pedigree and his personality. I think his personality can be debated on whether or not it fits in the SEC and in Baton Rouge and at LSU. But, one thing's for sure, his style of coaching will. And I think that's kind of what LSU needed right now, Bo, was, somebody that's, not a politician, just trying to write the football program. And LSU seemed like they got the guy that's just really going to pay attention to making sure that the program is getting back to a disciplined state of mind where, they're just taking care of what's going on the field. And, Brian Kelly seems like a phenomenal get at this point of the process for LSU.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic hire. Jordy Culotta, LSU Insider, on the Out of Bounds show. Do you think that Scott Woodward, it doesn't matter now because it's still a phenomenal hire, but it's just fun to talk about. Do you think he thought he had Lincoln Riley? How do you think that played out?
I think
Jordy?
Brody Miller offered some really good insight to it on his latest article over at The Athletic. And if you read it, I think that there was a lot of stuff that was moving around Lincoln Riley the past 2 weeks. And LSU got on a plane with anticipation of going to meet him. And that meeting never happened. According to some people with some pretty good information around just kind of the last couple of weeks with Lincoln Riley. I think that, when Woodward found out that Riley was on the market, that, he knew he was going to make an aggressive play. But, come to find out, it was really about Riley just using LSU and Oklahoma for leverage against USC's. He wanted to get out of the Southeastern Conference. And, it was a meeting that I was told never actually happened, that there was some smoke around them really talking and trying to get together. But when it came down to it, they never met. And, I believe Woodward thinks to himself, if he was ever able to sit in front of Riley's face, that he would have convinced him, just like I think what happened to Kelly, because, judging by some reports and talking to some people that have been close to it, Kelly was one of the first calls. He was somebody that Woodward reached out to just to gauge some interest in. And, Kelly kicked the tires and called some high school coaches around Louisiana and called some people within the industry that, that were tied to LSU or just had some familiar advice that they could give on LSU. And, I think Kelly called back Woodward and told him that he was going to pass on it, that, it was kind of a soft no. And I think Woodward the entire time in the back of his mind was kind of thinking, hey, if I, swing for the fences on guys like Jimbo and Lincoln and come up with, empty-handed, I'm just going to go back and put the full court press on Brian Kelly. And I think that's what happened over the last 72 hours when, he saw some things kind of starting to shake out. He said, you know what, this is my guy. I'm needling in on him, and I'm going to get him, and I'm not going to let him tell me no.
That you got to love what Mike Bone and Scott Woodward just did, ADs at Southern Cal and LSU. They put it all out. So basically, I guess Woodward comes back to the drawing board and puts together a package for Brian Kelly that he knows if Kelly tells me no, it will not be because of financials and all the other perks that I'm going to put in here. Right, Jordy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, and I said this morning, Bo, I think that a prerequisite for Scott Woodward taking this job was a process that nobody will ever tell you about. You'll never read it in any books. Maybe, 30 years from now when it comes out, the statute of limitations will be gone on it. But I think the process of bringing Scott Woodward as the athletic director to LSU probably began 5 years ago. He's been there for 3. I think that there was probably some money people that said, look, Scott, things aren't working out with Joe Oliva. They're going to get rid of him, but they need to make a move next knowing that you're in. And Woodward probably said, look, I'm in, but here's some things that I got to have. And first on that list was a war chest. And he needed to know that he was going to have access to the amount of money that he needed to go get a guy like Brian Kelly, a football coach that he knew, some people would perceive off the market or off the table, that he was going to have enough money and enough negotiating power to make that happen. So, I think that, in the back of his mind, he's always known he's kind of had the money to play with, and really kind of the ability to put an offer on the table that would be very attractive enough where it would be tough for somebody to tell him no. And I think that was kind of the stance he took on his second kind of go around at Brian Kelly through this process. And
now you have a grown-up as a head coach, Jordy.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the first time in a long time, you get back to an LSU coach who, like you said, is not a character. It's not, the guy who wears his hat goofy and eats the grass. It's not the guy that rips his shirt off and jogs on the levee. It's not those types of characters. It's a guy that he wants to win football games. Brian Kelly's 60 years old. He's considered an elite guy in the trade. Like I said, Lincoln Riley did you a favor. Lincoln Riley ran away from an SEC job where, right now this is the centerpiece of the college football world. I mean, the SEC is pretty much a minor league division of the NFL, and Lincoln Riley is considered to be a top tier coach. And for him to run away from that, run away from guys every weekend like Kirby Smart and Jimbo Fisher and Steve Sarkisian and Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach and Nick Saban tells you a lot about Lincoln Riley. But from Brian Kelly's standpoint, he's in that class. He's considered to be in that group, and for him to get down to the SEC, I think him signing a 10-year deal, you've got probably 5 to 6 years of him highly motivated to coach football at a high level. And
sure,
that's
an eternity now.
And a weekend matchup of Brian Kelly versus Nick Saban or Lane Kiffin or Jimbo Fisher, Kirby Smart. I mean, that's very intriguing. And I think if you're an LSU standpoint, you kind of feel like you're showing up to a gunfight with just as much artillery as the other guy.
Sure. He is Jordy Culotta, JordyCulottaShow.com. He joins us on the Bell's Two-Hearted L guest line, LSU Insider, on the Out of Bounds show. To me, Jordy, Brian Kelly is a much better hire than Jimbo Fisher. I understand Scott Woodward's deal at that time at A&M and kind of what the climate was and what you needed to do to get that fan base at that time where they needed to be, because everything's ebb and flow and different. I think Jimbo's incredibly overrated, and I think LSU has a better coach today than A&M. Your thoughts?
I agree with that. I think that, Jimbo is, for whatever reason, he provides a lot of security to Scott Woodward. I think those two have a relationship that dates back, to the early 2000s when they were both at LSU together. And, he feels very secure in Jimbo's ability to coach football and build a program. But, what you get in Brian, I consider Brian Kelly in the class of like Belichick and Saban as far as like football CEOs. I'm not comparing Kelly to their their the championships and their resume and all that stuff. But when I think of guys that run their program kind of like a Fortune 500 company, I think Nick Saban, Bill Belichick, and I kind of think Brian Kelly's in that mix too. I mean, he kind of has that persona and charisma to him where, look, there's no BS. There's not a lot of fluff. I mean, it's just kind of really about making his team good and relevant and having them prepared to play. And I think that's something that LSU has really been dying for a long time. And I'm like you. I think they got the right guy at the right time. Bo, to me, Brian Kelly is the best hire, not the best coach, but the best hire that LSU football has ever made.
Do you think Woodward? I don't know. I don't get the feel that he was ever really strongly considering Napier, Aranda, or Mel Tucker. He wanted someone that really had that track record, so to speak. Am I wrong? Do you feel like he made? Do you think he went into a deep dive on those three candidates, Jordy?
Yes, I do. And talking to people around Napier and Aranda's camp, they were never even contacted. I mean, we talked to people, extremely close to Billy Napier, and they were never contacted. Dave Aranda, same thing. I think that he had a tier list, and he never got off that top tier of that list. I think that he was flirting with Jimbo Fisher. He was flirting with Lincoln Riley. He went back and forth with Fisher. He thought about taking a meeting and tried to get a meeting with Riley, and it never happened. And once he saw that kind of fell through, he went back to Kelly, and he never got out
That's
of Kelly.
Strong.
And it is strong. And I think that is,
That's
strong. For the last couple of days, there were a lot of people trying and wanting and seemingly, trying to get out of supporting Scott Woodward, trying to kind of bail on his status. And I think for him to kind of close like this, just really kind of, it reapplies that status of him, of just kind of, him and really Mike Bone, like you pointed out, I thought, and even Scott Strickland, the athletic director.
I think it's a fantastic hire, by the way.
They've done a phenomenal job. Yeah, I think Billy Napier in Gainesville makes a ton of sense.
Jordy Culotta on the Out of Bounds show. All right, 5-star LSU quarterback commit Walker Howard had already committed to LSU, but was kind of looking around at Notre Dame. Now Brian Kelly's at LSU. I don't think anybody expected him to flip, so to speak. Tell me about him. What do you know about him? I mean, evidently this is a big-time talent and prospect.
Yeah, Walker Howard to me is, look, we're very biased, but he's the number one pro-style quarterback in the country. He's got the ability to be, kind of an athletic type back there where you can almost label him not a dual threat, but he's a guy that can, if it breaks down, he's athletic enough to help you out with his feet. But strong arm. His dad played LSU football. His dad was the quarterback at LSU in the mid-'90s, Jamie Howard. He just comes out of a system. If you're watching LSU play, Jack Besh, who's the freshman wide receiver, Walker Howard was his leading receiver at St. Thomas More the past couple of years. And he went to camps all over the country in the off season, Bo, and he just exploded. He was alongside Quinn Ewers, who was the Alston quarterback who was committed to Ohio State, and he was the number one quarterback in the country. But then once he got the ability to go to college a year early, people have kind of focused in on Walker as the number one quarterback in the country, and he made a visit up to Notre Dame, and I think he's got good rapport with Brian Kelly. I don't think that he was ever really considering leaving this part of the country or the SEC, and he's been committed to LSU, and there's been a lot of social media stuff that has come out, and Walker Howard has liked that stuff, and you can kind of see that he's behind the hiring. So it is good to see that some of these top tier recruits in this class have really kind of signed off and agreed that Brian Kelly's the guy.
Jordy Culotta on the Out of Bounds show. All right, so here we go. LSU. I guess he hits the ground running this week, right?
They announced it this morning. The deal is 10 years, $95 million. He will not coach the bowl game at Notre Dame. So I think he's in play right now. He's going to work. He's representing LSU. LSU's put a hype video out. They're going to make an announcement tomorrow at a press conference, and I think that they hit the ground running.
How do you think this looks different compared to LSU the last 10 or 15 years, where other than 2 years ago and maybe the 2013 team on offense, Ogeron and Les just won with elite talent, defense, and a lot of times pounding the rock. Do you expect a little bit more of a modern-day offense, Jordy?
Absolutely. This is a business move. This is all about business of football. This is about establishing a program, building one, and doing it at a consistent rate. LSU's kind of been on a roller coaster ride the past 21 years in this program and seen some really, really high points. But they've also kind of dipped down into the valley to show you that if you don't get the right guy and you don't procure it enough, that you can lose you can lose your grip on it. And I think Kelly kind of establishes that stability, that consistency that LSU was looking for. So I think that really makes it feel different past, the past decade that LSU football has experienced. So I expect a modern day offense. I expect a high flying defense. I expect that recruiting will be paid attention to. I just think that Brian Kelly's going to run this thing like a Fortune 500 company, and he's going to make sure he trims the fat every year. He's going to make sure that he puts puts personnel in the lane that they can sprint and run fast.
I think this is a bad deal for Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. I think that even Lane Kiffin is looking at this and trying to find an exit strategy, because he knows that that's a giant wrangler. I mean, that's somebody that can handle the job at LSU. That's
right.
Somebody that really understands the scope of it, can handle the entire monster, and that has always been a scary proposition, I think, for the rest of the league.
And I think they've been able to win with two inept coaches. Now they got a grown-up who's super organized, who's won at every step along the way, Jordy.
Yeah. Yeah, he's won at Grand Valley State. He's won at Cincinnati. He's the all-time winningest coach at Notre Dame. I mean, he has not been anywhere. And look, he squeezed the lemon out of that Notre Dame job.
No question.
A national championship performance, 2 college football playoff invitations. The fact that he gets players to South Bend, Indiana, is an enormous win in itself. I mean, if you've ever been there, it is not a destination. It is not somewhere where you want to visit. And the fact that he gets guys with football talent that have to score 23, 24 on their ACT. I mean, the fact that he's able to get guys there and he's got a top 4 recruiting class in the country right now.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a guy that really can, he sees the full scope of what it takes.
Wow. All right, you've got a question. One more before we let Jordy go.
Yeah.
Jordy Culotta, JordyCulottaShow.com on the Bell's Two-Hearted Ale guest line. Blake?
All right, Jordy. So we've talked to a couple other insiders, and obviously you're well tied in. It looks, and you even mentioned it, that Brian Kelly was not number 1 choice for Scott Woodward. Well, we also heard a story last week about Jimmy Johnston not being the number 1 choice for Miami back in the day when they hired him. So my question to you is this: knowing Lincoln Riley appeared to be post Jimbo, like the guy, and then it went to Kelly, do you think in 5 years we'll look back and say, wow, LSU dodged a bullet, made the right decision, or did settling on Kelly, you think, ends up like not being as good as Lincoln Riley could have been at LSU or will be at Southern Cal?
I think that Lincoln Riley told you everything that you needed to know in that Baylor post-game press conference. When he was arguing and complaining about Dave Aranda kicking a field goal late in that game and was doing it for the points, and I know that he was falling on player safety, and I'm all for player safety. But that, to me, was such a red flag of Lincoln Riley's mentality of, look, man, that's not going to play in the SEC. And I think that Lincoln Riley is a really good coach, and he's probably going to have success at Southern California. But when you talk about fits, when I saw that day, I thought to myself, that's going to be a terrible fit in Baton Rouge. And I think that Brian Kelly, though he can be, he's got those red-faced blow-ups and he's got that personality that sometimes looks a little standoffish. He's a football guy, and he's going to run this thing, and he wants to show up to Tuscaloosa and play, and he wants to show up to College Station, and he wants to go everywhere and find out if he's the best. And I think that's what LSU needs right now. So, to answer your question, I think that 5 years from now they'll look back and say, "Wow, we dodged a bullet."
There you go. We'll leave it there. Jordy Culotta, LSU insider.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks.
See you. So Culotta, loves the hire. I think they dodged a bullet with the Jimbo stuff. Jimbo trending the right way in recruiting, and a down year in the SEC West.
And he lost to Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss.
And LSU with a dead man walking coach, right? I mean, they beat Auburn, Blake, but Auburn went 6-6 with a first-year head coach. And Arkansas, I mean, Kendall Briles is a magician. They're limited. It's obvious. I mean, he is either the best offensive coordinator in the country or top 5.
Splitting hairs, right?
Yeah. I mean, to do what he's done with KJ Jefferson, who's a major work in progress, and needs, even more development. Arkansas, two super coordinators. I mean, when you look at all that Auburn and LSU went 6-6 in the SEC West. Say that out loud. LSU and Auburn combined were 12-12 this year. One's an elite recruiter, and one is around 12.
That's wild.
Wow.
But Jimbo went 8-4.
And Jimbo went 8-4. And Ole Miss took advantage and went 10-2.
I don't get the infatuation with Jimbo Fisher. When they were talking about him, Mike Detillier and Culotta saying he was on Woodward's number, that is, and what Jordy said is the biggest red flag to me. When he said, well, Scott's comfortable with Jimbo Fisher. Well, if you're comfortable with somebody, then he's probably not the right decision in college football.
Right.
I just, oh my gosh, what a disaster
how
that would have been.
Concerned, and he mentioned Lane Kiffin may look at that and go, now, I'm losing 15 starters and an NFL QB, but I don't know where he's going to go. Miami can't match Ole Miss's money. The only reason he would go to Miami if it opens up tonight or tomorrow morning is because Blake. So Miami can't offer as much money as Ole Miss.
And what can they offer? Because Southern Cal's now
they
up
can
there,
offer
Andy.
path of least resistance, a hotbed of prospects in the 3-county area, and maybe a place that he wants to live. Although those three things are pretty big. Now, they can offer him a longer contract.
And how much money can they get to per year? That's the question.
Let's say they get to $6 million and Ole Miss goes to close to $9 million. They do $6 million for 6 years.
Yeah.
And Ole Miss does almost $9 million for 4 years, which is the state cap, right? By state law, you can only offer a 4-year contract. Or maybe Lane just stays. But with all the movement, what's going to open up next? Of course, we say that, don't we?
Still waiting on Oklahoma to fill.
Duke's open. I was having fun there. Sorry. Out of Bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. Brought to you by Eye Care Professionals. Dr. Kirk Jeffries. Eye Care Professionals has 2 locations on Lakeland Drive, one in Jackson, and their new one, Belle Meade in Flowood. LASIK and cataract surgery, routine eye exam. Eye Care Professionals. Also, lunch today, brought to you by Bulldog Burger in Ridgeland, Starkville, and Tupelo. Delicious burgers, sandwiches, and appetizers. All at Bulldog Burger in Ridgeland.